Really?
Well, you know what's going on. Someone wanted a lot of attention, and now they got it.
That was the whole episode.
That was the app.
Yeah.
That was the
Oh,
premise.
is that what it was?
Like, we want privacy, and they keep going on every magazine.
Yeah.
Be a regular person.
Yeah.
Go get a job in an office.
Like, damn, we did some bad stuff.
She's half black.
And then the wife convinces you to leave the royal family. Like, I'm out. I don't need you guys. Which is crazy, because don't you just get free money?
Dude, give me my allowance.
What do you get when you're a royal?
You get a stipend.
You get a
What's
get a
the
bunch of
stipend?
cash.
Like,
I'm sure it's
you
a
spend
million
on
a
anything
month.
you want?
Yeah, what about the countesses?
Yeah.
Do they get?
They thought they had scrubbed the internet clean. For years, Meghan Markle's team has worked tirelessly to curate a very specific image of her life before royalty, a narrative of a hardworking, struggling actress who fought her way up through talent and grit. But in the digital age, nothing is ever truly deleted. Secrets only stay buried until someone powerful enough decides to dig them up. While Meghan Markle is busy launching her latest lifestyle venture on Netflix, attempting to convince the world of her authenticity, a bomb has allegedly gone off in Austin, Texas, one that has shattered her carefully constructed reality. This isn't a tabloid rumor or a disgruntled family member speaking out. This time, it involves one of the most influential voices in modern media, Joe Rogan. With an audience of over 14 million listeners per episode, Joe Rogan reportedly touched the third rail of royal gossip, validating a topic Meghan Markle has allegedly spent a fortune trying to suppress. The internet is now melting down over what's being referred to as the yacht girl exposure. And for the first time in her career, Meghan Markle is facing an adversary she cannot sue, cannot silence, and cannot control. What happens when the biggest podcaster on the planet decides to pull the thread on a Hollywood secret that was supposed to stay in the dark? The fallout unfolding right now is unlike anything the Sussexes have faced before. It's not just about embarrassing photos. It's about a timeline that doesn't make sense, finances that don't add up, and a missing years saga that allegedly contradicts the struggling actress narrative the public has been sold. Let's look at the specific evidence that has reportedly sent Meghan Markle's PR team into a total spiral. To understand why this is being described as a major catastrophe for the Sussex brand, you have to examine the timeline that Joe Rogan allegedly highlighted, the years between 2014 and 2016. In Meghan Markle's own words, during interviews and on her Archetypes podcast, she has portrayed this period as a time of grinding poverty and relentless hustle. She has spoken about driving a beat-up car with doors that wouldn't open, struggling to make union payments, and barely scraping by in the highly competitive world of Hollywood. It's a classic rags-to-riches setup, carefully crafted to make her relatable. But the photos that recently went viral appear to tell a very different story, one that suggests immense wealth, exclusive access, and elite social connections. Following Joe Rogan's alleged commentary, social media was flooded with images of a struggling Meghan Markle relaxing on the decks of massive super yachts in the Mediterranean. And this isn't a budget cruise we're talking about. These are private vessels docked in Monaco, arguably the most expensive square mile on Earth. In one particularly damaging photo that trended within hours of the podcast discussion, Meghan Markle is seen looking completely at ease, champagne in hand, surrounded by older, wealthy men who clearly aren't casting directors. The question Joe Rogan reportedly posed, and the one millions online are now asking, is simple. How does a broke cable TV actress afford a seat at that table? These aren't vacations you book on Expedia. Access to yachts like these is strictly by invitation. The disconnect between I couldn't afford to fix my car door and I spent my summers island hopping on a billionaire's floating palace is so stark that it shatters suspension of disbelief. The internet doesn't hate a hustle, but it absolutely hates a hypocrite. Right now, those photos are being treated online as visual proof that the so-called struggle may not have been entirely authentic. To understand the level of panic reportedly unfolding in Montecito, it's necessary to examine what the term yachting is alleged to mean within the darker corners of the entertainment industry. This is the part of the story mainstream outlets tend to avoid, but it's also the context Joe Rogan allegedly brought into the spotlight. In Hollywood circles, yachting isn't simply about sailing. It's widely understood as a euphemism for a very specific, transactional form of networking. The practice allegedly involves aspiring models and actresses being flown to exotic locations, places like Dubai, Cannes, or Sardinia, to provide atmosphere and companionship for ultra-wealthy men. These arrangements are often framed as modeling opportunities or brand ambassadorships. However, the industry rumor mill has long suggested something far more quid pro quo. It's a world defined by non-disclosure agreements, private jets, and unlisted phone numbers. When Joe Rogan reportedly discussed the nature of these trips, he wasn't merely commenting on vacation habits. According to Online Reaction, he was hinting at a lifestyle that appears fundamentally incompatible with the feminist, fiercely independent public image Meghan Markle presents today. If the allegations circulating online were true, that her presence on these yachts was part of that circuit, it would dramatically recontextualize her rise to prominence. It would suggest that her ascent wasn't driven solely by auditions or acting ability, but by navigating elite social circles connected to powerful men. This is precisely why the phrase "yacht girl" is considered so radioactive to her brand. It implies access to influence was facilitated through companionship rather than merit. For a duchess who speaks frequently about female empowerment and breaking glass ceilings, being associated with a culture that allegedly treats women as decorative accessories on a billionaire's boat would be a devastating contradiction. Now, let's examine the finances, because this is where the struggling actress narrative faces its toughest scrutiny. During the period in question, Meghan Markle was a supporting cast member on Suits. While it was a stable job, it wasn't private jet money. It was a basic cable series filmed in Toronto. The lifestyle depicted in the resurfaced photos, designer wardrobes, intercontinental travel, and stays at ultra-exclusive resorts would allegedly require a burn rate reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. And that's where, according to critics online, the story truly begins to unravel. Joe Rogan's commentary reportedly addressed this financial discrepancy with blunt logic. You simply cannot budget your way onto a Russian oligarch's yacht. You don't gain access to those circles by saving up cable TV paychecks. According to critics, there appears to be a missing income stream or a benefactor that has never been publicly acknowledged. This aligns with the free money concept Joe Rogan has mocked in the past, the idea that Meghan Markle seems to move through life with others frequently covering the costs. Whether it was her father, her then-husband Trevor Engelson, British taxpayers, or unidentified yacht owners, observers argue a consistent pattern emerges. The irony, critics note, is that Meghan Markle left the royal family citing a desire for financial independence. Yet her history, as interpreted by online commentators, suggests a recurring reliance on the wealth of others to sustain her lifestyle. When photos from 2014 showing Meghan Markle adorned in jewelry and enjoying vintage wine are compared with her public descriptions of hardship, the contrast feels stark to many. The public can forgive a complicated past, but they are far less forgiving of what they perceive as a lack of honesty in the present. By declining to explain this apparent financial gap, Meghan Markle arguably created an information vacuum. And following Joe Rogan's reported remarks, that vacuum is now being filled with the most damaging interpretations possible. It's also difficult to discuss the so-called yacht years without mentioning the man many believe holds the keys to the inner circle, Marcus Anderson. Among the many figures who have moved in and out of Meghan Markle's life, her father, her childhood best friend Nanaki Pretty, former royal in-laws, and stylist Jessica Mulroney, Marcus Anderson stands out as the one constant. Why? Because, as some industry insiders speculate, Marcus Anderson allegedly knows where all the bodies are buried. As the global membership director for Soho House, the ultra-exclusive private club that caters to the world's elite, Marcus Anderson occupied the role of gatekeeper, controlling who gained access and who was left outside. That position made Marcus Anderson the ultimate gatekeeper. He controlled who got into the room and who was left standing on the curb. The theory now gaining traction and reportedly alluded to during podcast discussions is that Marcus Anderson functioned as a fixer who facilitated Meghan Markle's entry into ultra, high-net-worth circles. According to speculation, he served as the bridge between a cable TV actress and European aristocracy. A photo from 2014 has resurfaced alongside the yacht images. It shows Meghan Markle with a friend, accompanied by a caption thanking Marcus Anderson for hooking it up. The question many online are now asking is obvious. What exactly was being hooked up? Was it simply a dinner reservation or an introduction to the kind of men who own super yachts? Marcus Anderson's continued presence in Meghan Markle's life has only fueled further speculation. He is reportedly living at the couple's Montecito home and traveling with them, suggesting to critics that he is more than just a longtime friend. To some observers, he represents a vault of secrets. He was reportedly there during the so-called yacht years. He was present for Prince Harry's first date with Meghan Markle, and he remains there now. If anyone knows the full truth about what allegedly happened during that period, critics argue it would be Marcus Anderson, and his silence may be the most valuable asset of all. But there's collateral damage in this unfolding narrative that can't be ignored. Prince Harry. Imagine the psychological toll of being confronted with this specific scandal, one that challenges not just public perception, but the personal story at the heart of his marriage. Prince Harry has built his entire post-royal identity around the role of protector. He battles the press, sues newspapers, and fights for security because he believes the media is trying to harm his wife. But what happens when the perceived harm doesn't come from paparazzi, but from the truth? What happens when the photos aren't invasive tabloid ambushes, but evidence of a past life he may not have fully understood? Sources suggest Prince Harry now finds himself in a deeply uncomfortable position. It's one thing to defend your wife against racism or unfair media attacks. It's something else entirely to defend her against questions about her own history. Did Prince Harry know about the yachts? Did he understand the full extent of Meghan Markle's relationships with wealthy, powerful men before they met? Or was he presented with the same fairy tale narrative, the Disney princess meets prince story, that the public was sold? Joe Rogan's alleged discussion reportedly highlighted this painful possibility, that Prince Harry may have been the last person to know the full truth. For someone of Prince Harry's background, the yacht girl label is particularly cutting. It doesn't just challenge public perception, it reframes the romance itself. It recasts him not as the savior who rescued her from obscurity, but as the ultimate prize she had been searching for all along. If public opinion shifts to viewing Prince Harry as the mark in a long con rather than the romantic lead in a love story, the foundation of their joint brand begins to crack. He gave up his family, his military roles, and his country for this relationship. If the basis of that relationship is ultimately perceived as transactional, critics argue the humiliation would be profound. And this is where the true power of the so-called Rogan Effect comes into play. When a traditional newspaper publishes a story, Meghan Markle's legal team can respond with cease and desist letters. But when a narrative spreads through podcasts, social media, and millions of independent conversations, control becomes far more elusive. They can pressure editors and quietly kill stories, but Joe Rogan operates outside that ecosystem. He answers to Spotify and his audience, not the traditional media gatekeepers. When he speaks, it triggers a viral ripple effect that no PR firm can easily contain. Within hours of the alleged comments, TikTok and Twitter/X were reportedly on fire. The Streisand effect appears to be in full force. By attempting to ignore or suppress these rumors for years, critics argue Meghan Markle may have ensured that when they resurfaced, they would explode. What's different this time is who's paying attention. It's no longer just royal watchers. Regular users are examining the photos themselves, zooming in on reflections in sunglasses, attempting to identify specific yachts, and cross-referencing dates with archived social media posts. This crowdsourced investigation, fueled by curiosity rather than tabloids, is what observers say makes the situation especially dangerous for the Sussex brand. Joe Rogan didn't just repeat a rumor. According to critics, he gave millions of people permission to ask questions. He validated skepticism. And once the public begins to feel misled, sentiment can shift quickly from indifference to anger. Comment sections on viral posts aren't dominated by trolls. They're filled with former supporters saying, "I defended her for years, but this doesn't look right." The loss of that middle ground, the moderate supporters, is often described as the death knell for a celebrity brand. Inside the Sussex camp, the mood is reportedly bleak. Sources suggest Meghan Markle's team is effectively paralyzed because there is no clean response. If they issue a denial, they risk amplifying attention to the photos and the phrase they most want to avoid. If they stay silent, they allow the narrative to harden into perceived truth. Critics describe it as a classic checkmate. Adding to the dilemma, suing Joe Rogan for defamation would be extraordinarily difficult. In the United States, the bar for public figures is extremely high. To prevail, Meghan Markle would need to prove not only that the statements were false, but that Joe Rogan knowingly made them with malicious intent. More critically, any lawsuit would trigger discovery. That would potentially require turning over emails, text messages, and financial records from 2014 to 2016 to rebut the allegations, a scenario legal experts often describe as a nightmare. Few attorneys would recommend opening that chapter to legal scrutiny simply to silence a podcaster. So, according to observers, the team is stuck, forced to watch as a narrative they worked for years to erase threatens to dominate the conversation. It overshadows the Netflix projects. It eclipses lifestyle launches. And it makes every interview feel performative, as audiences now watch closely for inconsistencies. This leads to what critics describe as the brutal reality of Meghan Markle's current position. You can hire elite PR firms, secure prestigious platforms, and even marry a prince, but you cannot purchase authenticity. Supporters of this view argue that Joe Rogan's words resonated because they aligned with a lingering suspicion that the story presented to the public felt more like a script than a biography. The resurfacing of the yacht photos and the normalization of questioning them marks what many see as a turning point. It's the moment when the victim narrative, fairly or unfairly, begins to lose its power. You cannot, critics argue, position yourself as a victim of the press while living a life of unexplained luxury. As the internet continues to analyze every pixel of those images, the question isn't whether Meghan Markle will respond, it's whether her brand can withstand sustained skepticism. The silence from Montecito may be loud, but the noise online is getting louder by the second. And as the internet has proven time and again, once something is seen, it is never truly forgotten.